will help the people of Libya. And remember, that must be our objective, that right now the situation is fluid, it is uncertain, it is difficult to get a clear understanding of everything that's happening everywhere throughout the country. So we are working very closely with partners. And there are many countries that have much closer relations with Libya than we do, as you know. We haven't had those relations for many years, to the extent that we've had the kind of influence that other countries might be able to exercise now. But everything will be on the table. We will look at all the possible options to try to bring an end to the violence, to try to influence the government. But as I said yesterday, obviously, as you heard the foreign minister, in any situation, our foremost concern has to be for the safety and security of our own citizens, just as the foreign minister's concern has to be for the safety and security of Brazilian citizens. And we are encouraging Americans to leave Libya. We have taken the step of providing a chartered ferry boat today to take off not only all the Americans who could get to the ferry boat pier, but also other nationals from other countries who we have offered to similarly take out of Libya. We urge Americans to depart immediately. If they need help, they should contact the embassy or go to our Bureau of Consular Affairs website for information. So we are moving on several tracks simultaneously.
Thank you. Right, the question is for Secretary Clinton, but we would also like for Minister Patriota to comment after this. Does the American government see a change in the position of...
All right, we'll cut away from the State Department there, where Hillary Clinton, on being asked a question by our own reporter, Rosalind Jordan, about the situation in Libya, gave a fairly lengthy answer, as did the Brazilian foreign minister who is there with her, most of which seemed to be along the lines of what we'd heard already. Let's go to Patty Culhane in Washington. Patty, as I say, it doesn't seem to have come up with much different rhetoric than we've heard already, or did I miss something here?
No, you're exactly right, and I think that's the most striking part. Despite what experts would say, and even possibly what I just suggested that she might do, we aren't seeing any sort of increase in the tone, the rhetoric. It's almost exactly what she said on Monday. One of the things that you could see in that statement is what the administration here is trying to push back at, this idea that days have passed, hundreds of people have died in the streets, and they have remained silent. They are pushing back to President Obama's written statement, which was released late Friday night, U.S. time, where he said that the violence needs to stop in Libya, Yemen, and Bahrain. Now, in those two other countries, the president has actually picked up the phone and called the leaders. He has not done that in the case of Libya. And again, we still haven't heard from the president. Striking that Secretary of State Clinton is basically saying, again, we're going to look to the international community. That is one of the things that we've heard from administration officials behind the scenes, is that they feel that they don't have a lot of leverage when it comes to Libya because of the tense relations in the past. Now, keep in mind, the Bush administration reestablished diplomatic ties with Libya, so they have had that relationship for several years now. But the administration is saying we don't give aid to Libya. We can't pull that lever. We don't have a base there. We can't pull that lever. Now, there are critics here in the United States that say that is simply making excuses, criticizing the Obama administration, saying they clearly were caught off guard and don't have any idea what to do next because they are dealing with Libya and Colonel Gaddafi, and they consider him very erratic. That may have been, at least that's the reason they're giving for being cautious, because they are afraid of what's going to happen to Americans in Libya. As you just heard the secretary say, they want to see all of the Americans get out of Libya. But there are still critics here in the United States who say, of course, the Obama administration could take steps. They could push stronger with the United Nations. They could impose unilateral sanctions. They could shut down the oil, make the oil companies come out. They could freeze assets. They could impose a no-fly zone. So that's at least what the critics are saying about the administration's so far somewhat muted response.
All right, we'll have to wait for the president himself to make his address. Patty Culhane in Washington, D.C. for the moment. Thanks a lot, Patty. Well, let's move away from Libya for a moment, because protests have been going on in Yemen now for 2 weeks as well. And 7 members of the ruling party have now resigned, saying they plan to form a new independent bloc. The decision appears to have been inspired by the violence that's been going on. 2 pro-democracy activists were killed and more than 10 injured in clashes in Yemen overnight. Witnesses say armed government supporters opened fire on the demonstrators in the capital, Sana'a. AlJazeera's Hashim Ahalbara is there. He has the latest.
There appears to be more cracks on the government and the political elite here in Yemen. The Minister of Tourism, Nabil Hassan al-Faqih, has told President Ali Abdullah Saleh that huge reforms are overdue and that Yemen needs early elections in September 2011 without Ali Abdullah Saleh as running as a candidate for the Minister of Tourism. This is the only way to save Yemen from impasse and from further deterioration of the security situation. 8 members of the ruling party have also resigned from the parliament, citing concerns over situation in Yemen and the violent attacks on the pro-democracy protesters. We also understand that the second highest ranking official at the Ministry of Local Administration has also resigned over what he describes as rampant corruption and violent attacks by government loyalists against pro-democracy protesters. Ali Abdullah Saleh remains defiant. He's saying that he understands that people are looking forward to change, but therefore change should be only dictated by ballot box, and that he refuses this whole idea of people inspired by events in Libya, Tunisia and Egypt and taking to the streets to enforce their own agenda of change.
Now, Saudi Arabia's King Abdullah has promised $10.7 billion in pay rises, job creation schemes and leniency for loans. He made the announcement as he returned home after 3 months abroad, receiving medical treatment. A new development fund is being set up to help struggling Saudis buy homes, get married and start new businesses. Now, a year after entering the Swat Valley, Pakistan's army has begun to scale down its operations in the region. The big challenge now is how to reintegrate some of the men who were once considered the enemy. Kamal Haider reports.
For the first time since the army started its de-radicalization program, we're allowed to visit one of the detention centers. To an outsider, this may look like a lecture room at a college or university. But this is the Mishal or Beacon program, helping detainees to reintegrate into mainstream society. Not long ago, these men had taken up arms against the military, but now under watchful eyes, they were being retrained in a relatively free environment. Each detainee is carefully screened before being selected for vocational training. We talked to one of the psychiatrists to find out what he feels may make the difference.
I see them very energetic and very active in the participation. And on account of rehabilitation and account of repeated assessments, I found out that they have very high motivation to go back into the society and become a more useful part than they used to be.
The Swati Taliban were able to